Maxton Hall, The World Between Us, may play out predictably for most of its season, but its actors compensate immensely for its by-the-beat story. To summarize the first season, our focus is on Ruby Bell, who goes to Maxton Hall College. The college is where the children of the elite go to get their education before they go off to places like Oxford. For Ruby Bell, though, she's not part of a rich family, a famous family, or a powerful family. She's from a working class family, and she had to get a scholarship in order to get into Maxton Hall. For her in-game goal is to get into Oxford. One of the problems with that is, while she's smart enough to get a scholarship to get into Maxton Hall, she keeps a low profile so that she doesn't have to deal with all the drama that the rich people have with each other. And because she keeps a low profile, it makes getting a recommendation letter for Oxford a bit challenging. But into her stumbling upon a scandal with Lydia Beaumont, and with her being discovered, so comes Ruby having to deal with Lydia's older brother, James. James throws 10,000 at Ruby to try to silence her. She rejects him. Because he can't control her with money, he decides to attack one of her main sources of trying to get a recommendation letter from the headmaster. And as you can imagine, this back and forth leads to them getting to know each other, and what you often see in shows like this. So the first highlight for us, getting to the review portion, is Harriet Herbig-Matten, I think that's how you say her name, who plays Ruby. As implied with the summary, Maxton Hall, The World Between Us, which is a longer name than this needs to have, is a show that very much is by the books. It doesn't really pursue doing anything new or original or anything like that. But one of the things that Herbig-Matten does is that she gives a sort of earnestness, a sort of vulnerability to her performance that keeps you from calling the entire show generic. For whether it's the excitement Ruby gets in completing a task, or how she interacts with her family, or what really kind of drives her performance, the hot and cold nature that happens between her character and James, that's going to get to you. Especially because when it comes to Herbig-Matten, she has, especially when the camera's just focused on her and over the camera shot, she knows how to get her eyes watery, and it gets you to the point where you're getting emotional too, as she's clearly torn between knowing the type of people James comes from, yet at the same time thinking maybe he's different, that maybe he may stand up to his dad, that maybe he may love her despite their economic differences. And yet, from roughly episode to episode, the back and forth leads her to just go on a whirlwind that when she started the season, when we meet her, she probably wasn't expecting. The next highlight is a gentleman who plays Mortimer, whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. And I mean, every show needs a villain. And when it comes to Maxton Hall, that is Mortimer, who plays James and Lydia's father. He's someone who's the head of the family's 125-year-old business, I think it is. And yes, like any character rather, there are moments of levity when it comes to him, but when it comes to business, he is very firm, especially because he married into the family, he wasn't born into the family, so he's really trying to prove his worth. And take note, it could very much be like Ruby. He came from nothing, built himself up, and now he's just trying to hold on to that power since he knows what it's like to be poor. But as we'll go into later, the first season doesn't really do much in the way of character development when it comes to supporting characters, but even with that said, there's something about Mortimer as a villain, especially because you can see the nastiness that he has indoctrinated James with, that it's just, he's the type of character you'll love to hate, especially as you see the way he talks about Ruby, the way he treats her, and the way he pushes his son to treat her. So the last highlight plus is going to be Angus, who is Ruby and also Ruby's sister's Ember's father. And the reason why Angus is a highlight for us is that even though, unfortunately, like most supporting characters, he is as fleshed out as we would want him to be, at the same time, there's something beautiful about the balance between him being this person who is unfortunately bound to a wheelchair, yet at the same time, he's not this happy-go-lucky type, nor is he a woe is me type. He lives very much in the middle. For while he's happy that he has his 2 healthy daughters, he's married, he has a home and everything, at the same time, he recognizes there is a financial burden from him being unable to work. There is, of course, the potential issues because when it comes to his wife's anniversary, or rather his anniversary with his wife, he has problems just trying to bake something for her because of the way the home is set up and it's not fully adapted to his current circumstances. And I would say, like many characters in season 1, what you get is a wonderful foundation for a character to be built off of for season 2, and I can only hope that with just being introduced to the complexities of what Angus is going through, and potentially at large what a lot of people who use wheelchairs go through, especially if they're not well off enough or privileged enough to have the accommodations they would want to need, I can only hope that with things being established enough with Ruby and James, now we can move on to other characters and really dive into what their lives are like. So get into the on-the-fence topics. The first one has to be the handling of supporting characters, mainly in that, again, most characters on Maxton Hall have a wonderful foundation set. The problem is it's a 6-episode season. Most episodes are between 40 minutes to maybe an hour, and while the foundation is established and good, nothing is built-ized. And pretty much you go down to through most of the characters outside of Ruby, maybe James, maybe Mortimer, you'll have the consistent issue of feeling that in season 1, we just get to know them a little bit, and we'll have to wait to season 2 to see if this show truly expands and taps into all their potential. So for the last topic, it is just, unfortunately, Maxton Hall is largely predictable. Whether you want to talk about Ruby and James' dynamic in their relationship progress, whether you want to talk about how Mortimer, while not a mustache-twirling villain, is fitting of a villain of his caliber in terms of him being sexist, dismissive, stuff like that. Or even while Ruby and Mortimer may be notable in terms of the performances, James, while he's not like the dude from 50 Shades of Grey and into a bunch of kinky weird stuff, he is still very much the hot, troubled guy. But while this show does have the issues of being predictable, at the same time, it's only 6 episodes. Each episode, I believe it's, and I may have just said this a minute ago, but it's about 40 to 50 minutes, maybe a little under an hour. And there's no real fat to the show. It's pretty much to the point. And honestly, if you're someone who likes young adult dramas / romances, similar to people who like horror movies, even though this is not great, it gives you what you came for. Hence why, overall, Maxton Hall, The World Between Us, I would say lays a decent foundation for where it could go. But for those who don't like waiting on potential, but want it realized instead, this could be a challenge to sit through even with its short episode count.